Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. The busy holiday season is here, and Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts to spark joy, wonder, delight, and that's exactly what I wanted feeling. Hey, y'all, I ordered a super cool piece. It's a candle with a sculpture of an LSU Tiger Stadium on top of it. And each officially licensed laser cut wooden replica features up to 4 layers of detail, creating a bird's eye view of a specific football field, seating section, and more. And every label includes your stadium's name, the team's logo, and school location. And it has a coconut, soy, vegan wax infused with sandalwood smell that creates tailgates and touchdown scent profile, reminiscent of game day. It's invigorating like fresh cut grass and nostalgic like smoke from a pre-game grill, and calming like the crisp autumn air of a new semester on campus. Y'all, I love it. I have it at the base of my TV, and I'm ready to watch the Tigers play on Saturday night, right? Uncommon Goods. Look, when you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. And many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches. So shop now before they sell out this holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. They have the most meaningful, out of the ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts you can personalize. From holiday hosts and hostess gift to the coolest finds for kids to hits for everyone from the book lovers to diehard sports fans. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, not the same old selections you can just find anywhere. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. So to get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/RLRC. That's uncommongoods.com/RLRC for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights? Warning. Each episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, will contain descriptions of acts of violence or of a sexual nature and are for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off the internet or from some television show. These facts I'm retelling were presented to me by the victims of the crime or the perpetrators who committed the crimes. My descriptions of the crime scenes are what I saw with my own 2 eyes. If you are going to get offended, turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton, and I have Jim, the Hitman Raftman, on the line with me. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Woody. Good morning, Real Life, Real Crime fans. How are you today?
I hope they're all doing well. Y'all, we are doing our first ever with this new system, remote co-hosting, if you will, and Jim's in Florida, and I'm finally back in Louisiana today. Just got back in the country last night. So we're laying out a track, and this is a very unique story, and it's going to be kind of graphic. So if you're going to get offended, turn it off. But the name of today's episode is Slumber. All right.
I like it, Woody. That's a good one.
Yeah, all right, Jim. So I'm going to let you start it off.
Okay, so this was in 2006 time frame, I believe it was.
Yeah.
It was in dead smack in the middle of winter. And in Louisiana, it does tend to get cold. So if you fans that live up in the north, I know you have zero sympathy for Woody and I when it comes to cold in Louisiana. But for us, it's brutal.
Yeah.
So
it was really cold. Yeah. It was in the middle of hunting season. I think probably like the second week of December. And I was praying we wouldn't catch anything, Jim and I. And we were on the night shift during the week, but we were about to get off, I think, because I was going to go up to the property and go hunting. But I know it was cold because it was ice on the ground, which is kind of rare here. And, but it was like in the mid-20s and very, very cold that morning. Go ahead, buddy.
Very, very cold. And, you know, when we had on call, we were on call till 7 a.m.
Right.
And that's when the day shift would be able to take over. And, of course, this call comes in a little after 6.
Yeah. Let's tell them let's tell them about that real quick. When you work all night like that and you're just praying, even if you're in uniform patrol or whatever, that last hour, you're just praying that you don't catch a call, right? Especially if you're getting off duty for the next couple of days and you've been working and the night shift, et cetera. And you're like, oh, Lord, please, no calls, nothing major. And sure enough, it's 6 something. We get the call.
For those that have worked in law enforcement, or actually it kind of works this way with just about any job, but when you want things to be quiet and smooth, it never is.
Exactly.
So, and when it's just the way it works. I don't know why, but it's just how it goes. And in this particular time, we wanted to be quiet. And of course, we get that early morning call at the lumber yard.
Well, the call comes in. I was actually at my residence, packing up my hunting gear, getting ready to cut out and go. And then pager goes off and it's 1021, the radio room. And it would have gone off to both Jim and I. And so we call in and the dispatcher says, you got a body, in Holden at the lumber yard. And now out at the lumber yard, it's, where the forestry is big in this area, right? And so they cut a lot of trees and a lot of times was for what they call poles. So they pick out the biggest, longest, straightest pine trees and they haul them in by the truckload and they shave them down in the lumber yard and they stack up these huge piles of trees. I mean, like, I don't know, what you say, Jim, 30 to 50 feet high. And,
very much.
And they spray them with 24 hours a day with water and a creosote mixture to keep them from drying out. And so anyway, so Holden, Louisiana, y'all was on the east side of the parish. And you heard me talk about that in the past, how the law enforcement wise, the parish is divided up geographically, east and west. And so I know it probably took me at least 25 minutes to get there. And Jim, where were you living at the time? In Denham?
I was in the southwest sector, so it was in Denham Springs.
Yeah.
And so to get to Holden from where I at was about 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Give or take. And much like you, typically at that time in the morning, you're not really expecting any more calls to come in. You kind of already got through that time frame where the most things would happen. So much like you, Woody, I was at the house as well when that call came in. And as I mentioned earlier, it was really, really cold. So I had to get completely changed and drive on over to the lumber yard where Woody and I met up there at the lumber yard and took that walk through the lumber yard together.
Yeah. And it was they had like, an office type building in the lumber yard. And anyway, so we were alerted that the body was there, and one of the workers in the lumberyard got there that morning and saw a body, and they called it in. But tell them what happened, Jim.
Well, when we got there, we, start looking at it. This lumberyard's pretty good size. And as we're walking through and they're leading us to where the body is, that crime scene is going to be pretty big. And when we first observed the body, and he was laying down on his back with his pants pulled down to his ankles.
And it was a black male.
It was a black male.
Maybe
about 6 foot, 6'1", probably about 160, 170 pounds, give or take.
Maybe late 20s, I would say. Not that old.
Not that old. It's either late 20s, early 30s, somewhere into there. And, one of the things we observed when we looked at this body was not only were the pants around his ankle, but he had a bottle shoved in his ass.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's just one of those you don't forget.
It's just one of those you can't lose the visual, and it's strange and it's odd.
And we're not talking about a small bottle, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about a 40-ounce bottle. If y'all know what a 40 is, that's like bigger than a quart of beer, like one of the big malt liquor bottles. So it was an impressive feat, to say the least. And when you're looking down at him, he's first of all, he's obviously deceased. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, he had ice on him, and his pants are down, and he has this huge bottle shoved up his ass. And it also had, cream all over it. Cream, if you will. There was a Suave, SUAVE, hand cream, one of those big pump bottles beside it. So I guess he or someone lubricated that bottle up well, and he had that thing shoved up as far as he can go.
And one of the other things that was there too was there was a crack pipe off to the side that had a little bit of crack in it. It had a little bit of a crack cocaine rock in it. Obviously was doing some sort of drug. So at this particular point, we're starting to think that maybe this is some foul play or something went wrong while, they were either doing drugs or doing some strange things.
Yeah. It definitely, it had to be investigated. It's a younger guy, and just with your pants down on the ground, and he still had his jacket on. It was like one of those fluffy gray, jackets. We knew he had been out there for a while, and it didn't appear to be natural causes. We didn't know what it was at this time, but we had to, as always, treat it as a homicide until we know otherwise.
So once we try to, look around and fan out to find some more evidence or to see what could put together the story for us, there was no video camera. But what we did know was that on the opposite side of this lumberyard was actually a church. And Woody, why don't you go ahead and explain the church, because I know you've had some run-ins with them previously.
Yeah. Okay, let me tell you, the lumberyard is right off of Highway 190, which runs right through the heart of Livingston Parish, all the way from East Baton Rouge Parish to Tangipahoa Parish, and some people call it Florida Boulevard. But this is a really, really rural area. There's no houses. It's the only thing out there in that section is this church, per se, if you will, and the lumberyard. Now, the church is a non-denominational, if you will, but it was actually being used as a rehab center. They were saying that they were an official rehab center, and through God or whatever. But they housed a large amount of people that were addicted to drugs. And we'd had some complaints on it, some street talk, if you will. And you're only as good as your CIs, your confidential informants, and people would call in and they would want a little money and say, hey, this church thing, it's not really a church. They're running dope out of there, and the rehab is not, it's bullshit. They're taking insurance money. They check these people in. They get only if they have insurance, and they're taking their insurance money and they're keeping them there on dope, providing dope for them, because the longer they stay there, the more money they get from the insurance company. We're talking like $25,000, $30,000 a month from insurance companies. And the word we had was that most of the people that were there weren't even from Louisiana. They would bust them in from all over the country and stick them in this church, if you will, in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, and do the rehab. Go ahead, Jim.
I mean, it's a big scam is really what it comes down to. It's something that's more prevalent the last few years. I know Florida has quite a bit of them. There's just a lot of states that have these types of facilities, and not all of them are bad. So we kind of start to realize which ones are bad through our contact with the public and people coming in and out of there, and eventually we'll learn about it, which is what happened in this particular case.
Yeah, and even though we'd been getting bits and pieces of information about the place, it had only been open for like less than a year, but they didn't have any neighbors. So it's not like it's a nice neighborhood where people are pulling in and buying drugs all the time and neighbors are complaining and shit, right? It's just, it was out there. They kind of kept quiet, and we didn't have them walking down the highway and stuff like that. We didn't really have any contact or complaints on them, other than we were getting bits and pieces of information that it was a potential fraud and that they were supplying drugs to keep their patients in the facility to make money off of them. But we had a ton of other cases to work, and it's kind of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And even though they were on the radar, they weren't number one target, if you will. So yeah. There's nothing there, right? Jim said there's no cameras. We know from talking to the lumberyard manager that he wasn't dead there when they left the afternoon before. So, we tape it off. We look through for any evidence, et cetera, more signs of foul play. The coroner is called. We work the scene and process it up. And then coroner comes out. And I can say, honestly, that's the only time in my career that we've ever bagged the body once we got done working the scene it sounds fucked up, but it's the truth. I mean, you put this body in the body bag and he was stiff, like frozen stiff. And so we put him in there, and the bottle was so far up his ass, it didn't come out. It tagged him and bagged him with the bottle on his ass.
Have to. That very well could be some evidence from fingerprints. So,
right.
We're treating it just like the homicide. And, one of the questions I remember asking the owners of the lumberyard was, what time did they leave?
Right.
And what is their process when they check out at the end of the night? And the owners actually said they left at close to 8 o'clock p.m. They had some paperwork to do in the office. And whenever they leave the lumberyard, they do a whole canvass of the entire lumberyard to make sure no workers are left on the premises and whatnot before they drive out of the gate and lock it up.
That's right. That's the other thing. They had the gate, y'all. It's locked. It's not like somebody pulled in there, and it's a little ways off the road.
So they went ahead and did their whole checks like they normally do, and they said there was no way at all that this body would have been here, would have walked past it. So we know for a fact that body was not there when they left. So obviously somewhere in the night, that body came on to their lumber yard and what took place ended up happening. One of the theories that we had was potentially what this person was going to that church that Woody was speaking of. Maybe they were out walking around, jumped the fence, and it was easier to cut through the lumber yard than it was to go all the way around. That was one theory. Another one could be that maybe there was some sort of gay lover type situation, or maybe even be a gay lover situation, just some sort of crazy sexual play, if you will, and they wanted to get away from everybody else at the church to find a spot that they could be alone and do some drugs and get weird, I guess.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. And the other thing we noticed as we're processing it and the coroner came and working the scene, and remember, it's butt cold now, especially for South Louisiana, in the upper 20s. And we could see from the back of that building that church was like maybe 300-400 yards to our left, but a little bit forward. But the back door of the church, we could see it. And guess what? It's 25, 26 degrees outside. And as we're out there working the scene and we're working, it takes a couple hours, y'all. We're looking for evidence, and then coroner comes and we have to, bag the body and get statements from the lumber. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right. Tons of photos and get the statement from the lumberyard guy, et cetera. Well, then that back door of that church has been open the whole time. There's people that like piled out there smoking and watching what we're doing from a distance. Well, that kind of was a clue too, right? I mean, it's too cold to be standing around, just because you're curious.
Right. It's way too cold. So we started thinking that somebody over there may have known something. Perhaps they know who this person is and may have some information. We weren't completely sure. So we then go over there to talk to them and to see if, what kind of information they could provide us.
Right.
And I know Woody initiated that conversation.
Yeah, but the funny thing, the funny thing was, but as soon as they're out there watching us the whole time, and as soon as we turn to walk over in that direction, they all scurry inside like cockroaches when the lights come on, right? They all haul ass inside and shut the door on us. Right when we're walking up to them, like, okay, Jim, this ought to be interesting, right? So we knock on the door and they didn't even want to answer. I'm like, hello, assholes. We saw y'all just go in. You've been out here all morning. And finally some lady opened the door and we introduced ourselves, Detective Overton, Detective Raffman, and, who's the manager here? And the preacher came out. He's like, I'm the manager. And we told him, hey, look, we have a deceased guy over here. Are you missing anybody? And cause I knew, and we knew it was the rehab, right? And,
oh yeah.
And so he was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if we're missing anybody or not. I'm like, okay, well, we've been out here for like 4 hours now. And I mean, how many people do you have here? And I think they had like 30 or 35 people living in this place. Go ahead.
They did, and we asked them too, like, do you have a list, like a roster list, right, or a manifest of who's staying here, whether they're assigned a specific bed or whatever the case is. And his response was real interesting. Woody, I'll just let you run on with this one.
Yeah.
I know it gave you a case of the red.
Yeah. He was, first of all, he didn't want to say anything. He was like, well, that's, I don't have to tell you anything. And we have, it wasn't called HIPAA back then, I don't think, but we have confidentiality things. And I said, I'm going to tell you something, jackass. You're going to tell us, and, or we'll call a bus out here and bring every son of a bitch in this place in for questioning. You can either talk to us here or we're going to drop the hammer on you. And that's it. I mean, he didn't want to let us into the place.
And one of the issues is too, granted, I know you had mentioned the HIPAA thing, but we were actually initially asking him if they could just do a list, do like a name, go inside, do a name call out and see who's present and who isn't present.
Right. Right.
And if somebody's missing, we needed to know who the missing people were, if there were any.
Right.
Because typically the deceased very well could be from there. And if there was somebody else involved and they took off and they're also missing, well, that gives us a name of somebody to start tracking down.
Right.
So that's how we initially started as a friendly thing. But if he really wants to take the gloves off and get into it, I mean, we absolutely can.
Yeah. And I think what really pissed me off was, I mean, we're standing out there and he's standing in the doorway. He's not letting us in. I'm like, can we come in and talk? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, why not? And he was like, because we don't want you in here. We want to protect the confidentiality of our clients. I'm like, dude, it's cold out here. And I mean, you know, can we come in? And so eventually he led us into the
like a corridor.
Yeah. It's like a corridor on their little kitchen. Hey, ladies, are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? Well, you're definitely not alone. There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living in our environment right now. It's in your food, your water, the air you breathe, the clothes you wear, your skincare products. They all mess with your hormones. Then there's the natural hormone changes your body goes through, premenopause, menopause. And while it's a natural process, it doesn't mean you have to suffer through it. The good news is you don't have to suffer through it anymore because now you have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms in women of all ages. Hormone Harmony is not just a hormone support and supplement. It's become a phenomenon. Women can't stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. And the biggest benefit? Well, my wife says it makes her feel like her own self again. And that's what women mention over and over in the reviews. And there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. And for a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use code RLRC at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC for 15% off today. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC. Hey y'all, let me tell you about Mochi. Mochi is a telehealth platform that connects patients seeking medication-based weight loss treatment with board-certified doctors and dietitians to help them determine the best treatment options to accomplish that goal. Mochi's program is completely virtual, meaning you can access their services anywhere in the United States and you will be meeting with their team online. You deserve doctors that listen. Mochi is dedicated to providing holistic, patient-centered care that prioritizes overall well-being with the goal of transforming how weight management is approached. Mochi Health takes a holistic approach to weight loss that includes visit with board-certified doctors, nutrition consultations, and medications delivered to your door. Science-backed medications including GLP-1s like Ozempic and generic compound versions, affordable and accessible regardless of insurance coverage. With Mochi, their dietitians work hand in hand with your medication to create personalized nutrition plans that fit your lifestyle. Reach your weight loss goals with science-backed, FDA-approved GLP-1 medications and support from real doctors and guidance from registered dietitians and help with making easy and sustainable changes to achieve results. Y'all have seen this. My wife has done it. My brother-in-law has done it. One of my best friends is doing it, and it really is an amazing process that works. So get started at joinmochi.com and use code RLRC to receive $40 off. That's join, joinmochi.com, and use code RLRC to receive $40 off and let Mochi help change your life. Thing was to the left. And let me tell you something, these people were getting fucked because from what we could see, they didn't have even bunk beds. It was like air mattresses and shit in a room, only the part that we could see. I mean, so it's like a flop house. almost, but he led us into the foyer thing. And he was still being an ass. And I said, listen, dude, I'm not fucking around with you. I'm dead serious that we're going to, pull every son of a bitch out of here and find out what's been going on, everything. I said, I'll have information that you may not be on the up and up. I said, I'm not here to try to sweat you about that. I said, Detective Raffman is not here. We're not here about, if there's drugs going on inside your establishment or if you're a real rehab or not. We're here about the dead body over there. And if you don't give us some information, it's going to be hard times for you. And so you don't want to see us not be nice.
He very easily could have said from the very beginning, if he didn't want any issues with us, to say, listen, I've accounted for all my people. Everybody's present. So if you guys have something over there, it wouldn't belong to the church. But that absolutely isn't the direction that it went. It was right from the very first second of contact. It was, we don't want to talk to you, and I'm not willing to help you in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And just, being rude, and which is very unusual for a rehab facility. It's very unusual for a preacher. That's typically not the behavior. They usually accept everybody. And, at times, what I've experienced and what Woody's experienced when you deal with other rehab centers, sometimes they actually need your help because they have somebody that could be losing control, and they,
right.
It's just when you have to come in and help. So for them to be this standoffish and to be this resistant towards our presence, definitely put up some red flags.
He didn't even want to give us his full name. Now I'm thinking about it when I asked it, he's Preacher Mark or whatever. And I'm like, last name? And it was like, I don't want to give him the name. I think that's what really got you pissed off. And then we were like, okay. So I basically threatened him, like, either you're going to help us, Jack, or, it's just not going to go well for you. So he ends up, acting like he went to make a count, and he comes back and he says, I have one person missing. And I said, can you describe him to us? And he gave this description that fit the guy. And so and again, we don't know if it's a homicide or what the deal is, but the potential killer could be inside this building. And so we asked for a list of everybody in the building, and he told us no. And I said, okay, well, you know what? We are going to go do what we have to do, and we'll be seeing you real soon.
Yep. We are going to get what we need.
Yeah. And so we went out, scheduled the autopsy, which we'll get in that in a second, but we run this guy, the preacher, and it turns out he has a criminal history for numerous drug offenses in the past. So that goes into the fake rehab deal, right? But the one thing you really don't want to do is what we call POP, and that's abbreviated for piss off the police. And he had pissed us off. So, Jimmy, why don't you tell him?
It's not like we're not going to find out who he is. I mean, we have an address. One, we can put in any call that's ever been to that location. We can, search property record or whatever the case might be to figure out who owns that property, and, give us the right first name, don't give us the last name. That's fine. We're going to find out. But now we're investigating something that could potentially be a homicide. So therefore, our scope of our investigation goes as far as it needs to go in order to solve the crime.
Right.
So, it wasn't like we weren't going to find out who he was, or, he was going to have some magical trick on us, and we're not going to know. Not to mention uniform patrol in that area knows just about everybody. If you're doing good community-orientated policing, then you're going to know who all the people are in your sector, and get some information. So we were obviously going to speak with some uniform patrol members and gather whatever information we could.
Right.
So we just kind of talked from there.
So what we did before we left was we called Stan, Carpenter, our chief of detectives, told him what was going on, and we came up with a plan, phase one, if you will, of pissing off the police. We parked a uniform patrol unit at the gate to the church, and with the instruction that anybody walks out of here, anybody drives out of here, pull them over, ID them, right? We don't want anybody fleeing the scene, et cetera. Hell, it could have been the preacher that was a murderer. We didn't know. But there weren't a lot of vehicles at this rehab center. These people didn't drive in. Evidently, they flew into Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and the preacher or whomever went and picked them up. So there's almost I think there were like 2 cars. But the first stage of pissing off the police is now you have a unit parked here until, actually our intention is we were going to try to get a search warrant, based off the fact that the preacher said the guy was housed there, and we didn't have shit else to go on, right? So, right. So nobody was leaving that son of a bitch without being identified. And I'm sure half of them in there probably had warrants. So, but we scheduled the autopsy, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. And Jim, you can tell them about it.
Yeah, so actually the autopsy was the same day. It was just later on that day. So,
that was rare for us, y'all. Normally autopsies had, it was at least one day out, but
at least one day. But in this particular time, given that it was cold out too, and I don't think the coroner had anybody else to do what he does on. So, yeah, we had the autopsy same day. So Woody and I went over there to the autopsy. So, just like we've done in previous cases, we take pictures of the serial numbered, band that's on the body bag, and take everything out and, lay the body out, and the coroner does what the coroner does from there, which is to go from head to toe and not missing it.
Yeah, and that includes, y'all, when they cut the clothing off, you have to go through the clothing. And one of the things they found in the clothing inside that fluffy jacket, which I'll never forget, it's like the Michelin Man thing with the rolls on the jacket, if you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, inside the jacket pocket, he had a bag of crack cocaine for like 4 or 5 rocks in it.
Yep. So they found the crack cocaine. They'll take all the clothes. They'll individually bag all that and send that off for analysis, because you don't know what you're going to find DNA fibers on there, or whatever the case could be. So, the meticulous process all the way through the autopsy. But when we got to the bottle itself, the coroner actually pulled the bottle out. And what we found on there was interesting, because it was a glass bottle. There was actually a condom put over that glass bottle. And it was lubed. So clearly it was intended for that kind of play. Now, maybe the condom was on there. If the glass broke, I don't know, maybe they thought it wasn't gonna rip the condom, or maybe that was just what was supposed to keep it in the one place. I don't really know, but there was a condom on that, and there was a ton of the lotion or the swab bottle of hand cream or whatever that was, all put all over that bottle. So the coroner actually pulled that out, and right away it was kind of a shock factor, because I wasn't expecting to see that. What I was actually thinking, if it was some sort of humiliation after you were already deceased for whatever the cause was, if someone shoved the bottle up this person's ass. But to find a condom on it, it kind of changes your mindset a little bit. Like, that was, like, what the hell is going on here?
It was
There's
crazy.
Legitimately a condom on a glass 40 bottle. Like, that blew my mind.
That's right. And you know what? Going back to the scene, and when you said it, we did find a condom wrapper, open condom wrapper, and that's what it originally made us thought it may have been some type of sex play. But then I'm like, okay,
we didn't find a condom. We literally looked through everything, every trash bin, on top of roof, everywhere. We
wanted the DNA from that condom.
Absolutely.
And obviously there was a reason we weren't getting it. It's because it was up his ass. But
it was up his ass, and it wasn't visible from where we were. You couldn't see. They had it shoved up so far that the condom didn't even come down all the way on that bottle.
Yeah,
we had no clue.
I to this day, I can't imagine. I mean, I know when a woman gives birth, God has allowed for things to stretch and do what it has to do. But the rectum, I just don't think it's supposed to be stretched out that big. I mean, it was bad. And I know this is graphic, y'all, but it's just, you have to imagine that, the base of one of those bottles has got to be, it's much bigger around than a baseball bat, the top of a baseball bat, maybe 2 baseball bats.
I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
So my mind was blown at that point. I was like, holy smoke.
Yeah. But, and again, back to we've had deaths, a lot of deaths where, people degraded the person they killed afterwards. Like, shoving stuff up in them, and stuff like that. So that was a real thought of ours, especially, when we couldn't find the condom and stuff like that. They killed him, and then the ultimate act of degradation, of humiliation, is shoving a bottle up someone. Oh, and not just a bottle. We're not talking about a Coke bottle. We're talking about a big ass bottle, shoving it up his ass.
And it wasn't far fetched to think that somebody could have humiliated him, because it was a short time before then we had worked one where there was a death that we can cover on another episode that had to do with humiliating that person after the fact.
Right.
So it wasn't a far-fetched theory to think that somebody could have done that, whether it was to embarrass that person and their family, or even somebody else that we don't know about. So it wasn't a far-fetched idea.
It was almost, it was more reasonable to think that somebody had humiliated him after death than it was to think that he voluntarily shoved that huge thing that far up his ass. So
as the coroner continues to go through with the autopsy, well, they'll do a tox screen, so they'll draw any urine out of the bladder, try to do whatever kind of tox screen they can do. Obviously it was, I believe on that test it came back positive for crack cocaine in the system. I do believe that was one of the, along with maybe, I think with some pills as well.
Some benzos, I think. There. Yeah. Some benzos.
So
and crack.
It kind of lit up a little bit like a Christmas tree and all the different lines. And, so obviously the person had been doing some drugs before this took place. And as the coroner continued to go through the autopsy and, ended up finding a blood clot, and this big blood clot known as a pulmonary embolism, found there in the lungs, which was what the cause of death was. And so, go ahead.
First of all, that is, a sign of relief for us almost, right? But when they say it's an embolism and that's the cause of death, so we're ruling out homicide at that point. But when they do that, y'all, and they work the body, and we've talked about it in past episodes, and they take out all your organs and weigh them and everything else. But when they get to that in the lungs, and the pathologist actually cuts open the lungs, and the embolisms are dark, almost like
it's dark,
black,
coagulated.
Yeah. It's big hunks. He actually pours them out in his hand, and he says, "This is your cause of death, boys. This is your cause of death right here." And
it wasn't a small embolism. It was very, very large.
Right.
So, according to the coroner, with somebody having that large of a pulmonary embolism, and you don't get medical attention right away, you're toast. And unfortunate, because, pulmonary embolism is very deadly. And in this particular case, that's exactly what it was. So you have this very large pulmonary embolism that he was able to discover. So he continues to go through the rest of his autopsy. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, condom on a bottle, pulmonary embolism cause of death, high on drugs. And then the coroner says, I can pretty much tell you exactly what happened here. And so we were like, okay, well, what you got? And essentially, what was determined was that this person smoked a whole bunch of crack. And when you smoke crack or you do something like that, it actually thins your blood out, right? So you're talking about thinning the blood out a little bit. Went ahead, put a condom on this bottle, lubed the bottle up completely, pulled down his pants and squatted over the bottle. And as he got down further on it, being so large as it was, made his blood pressure drop. And when his blood pressure dropped, and it being so cold out, it would cause him to pass out. But it triggered the pulmonary embolism. He fell back and died in that position.
Yeah.
So as it turns out, there was no homicide. There was no strangulation, stab mark, bite wounds, anything like that at all. This guy literally sat on a bottle, triggered a pulmonary embolism when his blood pressure got too low, and died as a result.
Right. And
that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah. Well, it's suspected too that he was masturbating as he was sitting on the bottle. And I mean, I don't know what the last thought that went through his mind was, but I know what the last thing that went through his lungs were, and that was the big blood clot, right? That killed him. So
big blood clot.
So I guess
we know at this point. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. The moral of that story is, if you're going to smoke a bunch of crack and shove a bottle up your ass and masturbate, make sure it's not like in the 20s outside, right?
Oh, I think everything was a factor in that cause of death for sure. Well, we knew at that point that we didn't have a homicide, so it was just an unfortunate death.
But
it wasn't a suicide because he clearly wasn't intending on dying that way. It had that pulmonary embolism and it had passed. So,
but the one thing we did have we were still pissed, right, from the lack of cooperation from what I'm gonna call the fake preacher. And yes, we're relieved it's not a homicide, but guess what? Now you're on a radar, asshole. You could have made this a lot easier for us. I mean, technically, if we would talk to everybody in there, that's what the preacher was afraid of. He was afraid we're going to start talking to his people or running warrants, checks on them, which we would have done. And he just didn't want us there. I mean, he's afraid somebody's going to say about dope and what have you, but you pissed us off. And we were going to intend it upon coming back with a search warrant based off of what we found out of the autopsy. It had been a homicide, ruled as a homicide, we'd have got a search warrant for the place because we knew that's where he was domiciled and, gone in and looked for anything or talked to people or what have you. But now you got us pissed off. So, Jim, what do we do?
Yeah, so, with that, we had, went ahead and got narcotics involved, uniform patrol involved. I mean, we spent some time. We even had some other detective teams finding out some information because before we knew that this wasn't a homicide, we needed to gather as much information as we could because that was a part of our investigation. So we've invested some time now into finding some things out, and we've actually found out a lot of issues that raise a lot of red flags, especially in the community. I mean, we were already aware that there were places that accept insurance and house those for rehab, and some are legitimate, but there are some that are not. It's just more of a scam to collect as much money as possible. And they're not really there to treat the patient. They're just giving them a way to be able to continue what they're doing while they're making money off of it. So some of that information started coming to light. Some of the people that were caught by uniform patrol, so to speak, with some drugs and what information they've been able to give out. So we've gathered this collection of information from uniform patrol and the detectives, and we got our narcotics unit involved with this, and they had a little bit of information, so they were able to use some CIs, some informants, confidential informants, to start working that, to go in there and whether they're purchasing drugs or whatever the case might be, they started an investigation.
Yeah. And that's correct. So we pulled out the uniform guy that we had there and let him think that we were letting them be. The confidential informants we mentioned earlier, they were reached out to, and these CIs, y'all, they get paid and they have to sign paperwork, et cetera, if they're, certified CI. And they were used to go back in, find out who was doing the selling, et cetera. And so they would set up on the place at nighttime and know who it was. It was, go ahead. You say something, Jim?
I'm going to touch base on one thing for those that understand about a confidential informant and some of the requirements that go into that. There's a misconception out there that if you have a confidential informant and you get them to sign the form, they go in to make a buy and that's it, they're good. You have to actually certify this informant, so they actually have to do this and build that rapport and build that trust where their information has actually been very accurate. So usually it takes a couple of times where they'll go and they'll, provide the information or make the buy and come back with that, and all the information was true and factual, and you have to keep a record
right
for that confidential informant. You have to actually log that, and that's how they become a certified informant, because the information given you is accurate.
And before you send them in, let's say the first time, and somebody, you catch them with some dope, and then they, say you want to help yourself out, give us somebody else, give us the bigger fish, et cetera. And they do that. And before you send them in, they have to sign all this paperwork that says they won't, commit any illegal acts, and they won't act outside of the scope of whatever the investigation is currently going on. I mean, it's a bunch of strict rules.
That they are not a law enforcement officer.
That's right. You're not a law enforcement officer. Then we search them, strip search them, make sure they don't have anything on them. And like if they're going in to make a buy, we take pictures of all the bills that they have, make sure they don't have any more money on them. And if they go in, they complete the transaction, they come out, we immediately search them, and we've had it happen in the past where they'll go in and buy X amount, more than what they're saying, and they'll break a piece off and try to hide it on them. And we've actually arrested people for that before, back when we were working narcotics. So when they come back out, you search them again, and, then especially if they're certified, you search them again, and then you're able to take that to a judge and say, hey, they just went in this residence, and you have to describe the residence and who was inside, et cetera. And you make a sworn affidavit for the judge, and they'll give you, so hopefully they'll give you a search warrant to go do what we call a no-knock search warrant. So you can hit the residence or the establishment in force and put everybody down, take them by surprise, and do your search.
And a lot of times, too, when you use a confidential informant, they get a number assigned to them.
Hey, y'all, let me tell you about Gobble. All Gobble meal kits are pre-prepped. That means less work for you and less waste in your kitchen. Their meal kits include everything you need so you can save time at the store or just skip that trip entirely. I got the box in and I had 3 different meals. I had a Kung Pao chicken, crispy fish tacos, and a beef bourguignon, however you say it. But let me tell you about the classic beef bourguignon. Look, it came with beef pot roast and a beef broth concentrate, red wine demi-glaze, cremini mushrooms, cipollone onions, mashed potatoes, baby carrots, and rosemary thyme butter. It was so easy to make. Literally like 15 minutes it took Cindy. And let me tell you something, all the dishes were fire, but this thing was like a taste explosion in my mouth. It's just unreal. We got to spend more time together and more time doing the things we love because everything came in this one single box right to my door. So see what a difference Gobble will make for your household. Right now, they're offering my listeners a fantastic limited time deal. You get $120 off across 4 boxes plus free shipping and free cookies. And let me tell you, those cookies, I ate one that was sin baked and it was delicious. Go to gobble.com/real life. That's GOBBLE.com/real life for $120 off your first 4 boxes. This offer is not available on the home site, so don't miss out. This is genius. It's taste explosions in your mouth like you never had. Hey, y'all. You want to set your child up for success? Is your child struggling with a specific subject or need help with the subject? Is your child ahead, not getting challenged enough in class? Well, IXL Learning is an online learning program that enriches your homeschool curriculum. It offers practice in math, English, language arts, science, and social studies while adapting to each child, meeting them where they are. Plus, IXL encourages students to become curious and empowers them to choose how to learn. Look, we homeschool our son. No doubt about it. He's more of a visual learner, and we use IXL, and Cindy teaches him, and there are so many different benefits to the program. It adapts to exactly what he needs in different areas. So IXL is the perfect supplement to your homeschool curriculum. IXL offers interactive practice problems, educational games, lessons, and video tutorials for every topic you're teaching at home. It's easy to use, time-saving. Everything on IXL is organized by grade, subject, topic, and subtopic, making it simple to find activities for the exact skills you're covering. IXL offers instant feedback and explanations of new topics as kids use the program. Kids can explore any topic in any grade level. They aren't forced into a single learning path like they are on other programs. If you're homeschooling your child because they were falling behind or because they were too far ahead like our son, IXL is a great program to help them get the exact support they need. Kids love IXL's positive feedback awards and educational games. IXL is trusted by 15 million students worldwide and has proven to improve performance in over 75 scientific research studies. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Real Life Real Crime listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. And don't forget, Real Life Real Crime listeners get 20% off. Y'all, we really do use this product, and it's been a godsend. Right. That's right. So they're not known by name. Yeah.
Confidential informant number 28, and they've made 8 buys, and you have all 8 of it. When you apply for that search warrant, you can put on their CI number 28.
Right.
And behind closed doors with the judge, you can provide the documentation to show that this is what this confidential informant has done previously. And that way you're showing that this is a certified confidential informant, that we're not just pulling this name out of a hat and making up a number. There truly is a log of what this person has done previously to show the truthfulness to the court when you're asking for the warrant.
And look, they have some CIs out there that are making more money than we make now. I mean, they're pros at it. Once they work off their original charge, and, it's no longer reasonable to say, okay, yeah, well, we caught you with an 8 ball of cocaine and you made 5 buys for us, you're certified now, et cetera. There's no incentive for them, right? And but so they start getting paid, and there's money through the system, through the sheriff's office and the DA's office that's allocated from other people's fines and stuff that they pay in court. And so some of them that I use over the years were making really good money, and they love to work. So back to this one, they sent in a couple of the top CIs, the undercovers, to do what they do to make the transactions on the church. And
that's exactly right, and that's exactly what happened.
And they were successful, and went to the judge and presented the evidence, and we got permission to do a no-knock, if you will. And Jim and I were both on the SRT team. I think I was off of it by this time, and Jim was still on it. And
I was still on it.
What would happen is
the SRT team would gather at a secret location to do a briefing. And you just don't run out and hit a house, right? Unless there's an active shooter situation or something like that. You gather all the intel that you can, such as how many doors, how many suspected people inside.
It's a lot like a military mission. You don't just run out into the mission and just run with it. You rehearse it. So you try to stage what we refer to as like a glass room, where you're kind of mocking up what that house might look like, or the building you're going into, off of whatever information you have, who could be there. You have to be able to communicate what size or what way. If somebody needs help on a particular side of that house, you know where to go based on whatever code word they have. So you rehearse it. You go over it multiple times, and just so everybody's on the same page.
And if time isn't of the essence, and sometimes on the search warrants, on a narcotic search warrant, you do want to get them done pretty quick, because drugs can leave the scene and not be there anymore. But if you know that you have a house full of shit bags and they're constantly going to be in possession of narcotics, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it before the SWAT team goes out and does a no-knock. And a no-knock is when basically it's sheriff's office, search warrant, boom, right? So Jim, tell them what happened. Describe it for them, if you will.
Yeah, so, we roll down the street there. We get to the location, and boom, right away, I was part of the entry team. So we had, a breacher and so on. And we get up to the door there. Sheriff's office search warrant, wham, hit it. We made entry. We did use a flashbang.
Let
we do that
as
a distraction.
Let me throw in a couple of details. When he says they're rolling down, then they had the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, Willie Graves, and now Jason Ard's the same way, the sheriffs. They gave us the best equipment, and like other departments, much larger departments in major cities were jealous of the shit that we had. And one of the things we had was the SWAT truck, and it was just badass, right? So when he says we're going down there, the SRT, the guys are all lined up in a truck, and then there's, usually some undercover vehicles ahead and behind, but they're stacked up. They're ready to go. They know what order, who's going behind whom. But when they bail out of the truck, so it's fast. And from the time, go ahead, Joe.
It's a big up armored vehicle, and then on the sides of it is actually this ledge that you can stand on.
That's right.
So as we're rolling down our way there, we can actually maneuver to stand outside. So when we get to that location, we can immediately just go as a team, just boom, just jump right off of that and get in your formation, so to speak, and you're tactically going right up to the house. So it moves like clockwork. And what I love so much about the team that we had, I'm sure they don't give names, but our commander of that, our team leaders, we really spent a lot of time training.
Yeah.
And the group of guys that were on this team, we all knew each other's strengths, weaknesses. We trained together all the time. I remember just so many hours that we would do it because we were active. We did a lot of search warrants. We did a lot of, on the spot type of call outs where it's an active scene. So we really were in sync. And so it was just amazing to be able to do this type of stuff with those group of guys. But in this one, we went up to the door, sheriff's office search warrant, boom, door gets hit open, we throw in the flashbang. And a lot of people think, well, does a flashbang serve a purpose?
Oh,
it absolutely serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, or if you're close enough to it, it's going to stun you for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And that's all we want, is to be able to stun it just enough to where we can make entry. And the goal of that is so we can have the upper hand. No shots are fired. Nobody gets in a confrontation. We're able to, just go on in and do what we need to do.
Yeah,
and we went in and secured those that were in there. Everybody ended up, a procedure that we'll take to make sure everyone is checked, names, so on and so forth. So we did that.
Yes, and so they hit both doors, y'all. Though I mean, you have to remember this is not a residence; it's actually like a large metal building, and they bang the front door and the back door, two separate entry teams, and you would be amazed at you play the way you practice. I firmly believe that, but so we would practice over and over and over again on building entries, et cetera, and without giving away the tactics, whatever. But you can clear a huge building like that in under 2 minutes. I mean, like you go through
if it's done right.
That's right.
It's done right, and you train a lot as a team, which we did, you can continuously flow as you're moving through.
Right.
And everybody kind of knows what their position is. If you're towards the back end of that team, you might be more on people watching, so to speak, to keep that under control, while the other ones that are doing their continuous movement throughout the building can keep going. And as they need assistance, they can call out for it, and it just keeps flowing all the way through. I can't get into the tactics on that because I don't think it would be safe for those that still do it.
Right.
But it's a great tool and a great process that is used, and it's highly effective.
And it also saves lives by being that efficient and that quick and that having that shock and awe. Bad guys don't even really have 90% of the time, they don't even have a chance to think about reaching for a gun. It's that fast. So, but anyway, they'll go through, secure everyone on the initial sweep, and then they'll double back and do a secondary sweep to make sure that there's nothing nothing that was missed. And then the search begins and the scenes begins to be processed.
And we have to check everything on the spot. We check it all. I mean, Woody can attest this too. There's times I found people hitting cabinets.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody tried to hide in a dryer one time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anywhere they can go that they could fit, they're going to hide. So you have to literally search. If a body could fit in there,
right,
then you have to look at it. And so we'll do the initial sweep, but then we do a secondary sweep because you don't know if you're going to miss it. And so it's critical because, my gosh, if you miss somebody hiding in a cabin and they sneak up behind you, you're in trouble.
Well,
so, we're very meticulous.
And you're doing it not only for your own safety, you do it as much for your own safety as you do your brother police officer, right? And so it's a very serious deal, but it's a necessary process. And it was done on this scene, and I think we hit it like at 4:00 in the morning, right? While you don't want to hit it at prime time if you don't have to. So most people would be asleep, but it was shit. It was a bunch of people, and I mean it was 30
the
plus.
Element of surprise.
Right. 30 something people. They go in, they secure everybody. And we found numerous, pills and some crack and drug paraphernalia and different things. Meth. That's right. And shit, it was a plethora. It was a drugstore of illegal narcotics, right? In this church, in the rehab center. And Jim went and snatched up the preacher after they did the initial sweep and the secondary sweep. He snatches up the preacher and brings him outside. And then we got to advise him of his rights, and we placed him under arrest and basically said, "Hey, motherfucker, told you we'd be back," So anyway, the long or the short of it is we shut that fucker down, and you shouldn't piss off the police. So if the cops ever come to your door, and I know the culture is hate in general, is lack of trust for the police and everything now, but if they come to your door and asking about a dead guy that's next to you, you should probably be nice to them.
I would agree. That would have changed the whole outcome of that. But at the same time, I kind of feel with this type of place, the information that came out afterwards, it was only a matter of time before enough information was gathered on them anyway, because Uniform Patrol was already being made aware of it. They got some information, and it didn't take long for detectives or narcotics to get in on it and have the information needed. So I think it was only a matter of time for the way that they were operating, that they would have, the outcome would have been the same.
Right.
And you just can't have that in the communities, where it's I mean, you know, a legitimate rehab place we support. But when you're going to operate as an insurance scam, you're not doing the favors to the people that need the treatment whatsoever. You're just supplying them a way to use drugs while you're just taking advantage of the system.
Yeah.
And scamming it for as much insurance money as possible. And that's just something, you just can't have that.
Right.
And that they got investigated for all that too. There was a bunch of insurance related.
Oh yeah, a bunch of federal stuff.
That investigated the insurance side of it, and there were a bunch that came back with that, with the insurance fraud.
Yeah, it ended up being a good case. But here's the deal: if they hadn't been dirty, there would have been no Slumber in the lumber yard, right? The guy wouldn't have died, right, smoking crack with a bottle in his rectum. I mean, the word was anyway that the preacher was hooking them up because these people weren't local. He was hooking them up with the local connections to get them whatever kind of dope they wanted. And so that guy technically died as a result of the insurance fraud scam and the fake rehab. But it was a good case. It was an interesting case. I mean, I never saw anybody else die like that. And the lanyap or bonus or free or extra was shutting down that asshole preacher that was, you know, basically just ripping everybody off and supplying these people who are already addicted with narcotics. And he was making an assload of money. I think it was $30,000 a person. You figure that out. He was
a preacher by title. He wasn't a preacher.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. He gets
real sense of the word, right. That's for sure.
Yeah. So
there was no preaching going on.
Yeah. The fake preacher, and he went to prison, and I don't know how long it was because they did a bunch of federal charges on him and insurance fraud and wire fraud and all kinds of stuff. And I didn't keep up with it because it drug out for a couple of years because he had a shit pile of money for good defense attorneys because he got it from the insurance, stuff. But he's in prison. I feel quite certain still to this day that he's in prison. So it was a good case, and feel bad for the guy that died, you know, that the Slumber in the lumberyard guy, for the victim, if you will. But it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But Jim, I appreciate you, man. And we'll see how this audio turns out for our listeners on this new system. Hopefully it does well. But you know, I love you and I appreciate you. We got some great responses, from our first two episodes on State Ground, part 1 and 2. People are loving it, evidently. You and I doing it together again is a real treat for me, and the fans are loving it, and I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a real treat for me as well. And, thank you guys for the support on this, and we'll keep sharing these stories.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And so y'all, if the audio doesn't come out right today, then we'll continue to try to improve upon it, but we'll do the best that we can. Hey, Jim, let's talk about real quick the podcast awards. The voting for the podcast awards shuts down at the end of July, which is like next Tuesday, I think. Week. So it's www.podcastawards.com. And we're up for 3 different categories. The first one is the People's Choice Award, Podcast of the Year Award, right? But there's this is worldwide, over 700,000 podcasts. There's not 700,000 that are nominated, but there's a whole bunch that are nominated. But if you would, if you feel so inclined, give us your vote in that category. Now, the second one is Society and Culture. And the third one is Drama and Storytelling. So if y'all go to www.podcastawards.com, you put in your name, you make a password, and it directs you to the sites. And, you know, if you like Real Life, Real Crime, I'm just curious. I mean, we're in the Society and Culture, we're up against shows that have millions of listeners. So I'm so curious to see how little Real Life, Real Crime can do as only 5 months old. But we appreciate being nominated, and we'd appreciate your vote. So,
you like what we've been able to do, and you like what Woody's put together over the last 5 months, please go on to that site, vote for us, and share it with your friends and your family. And I know that LSU Tiger Nation will go ahead and share this information amongst all those Tiger fans out there. I've got to give love to my LSU Tigers.
That's right. That's right. It's almost football season, babies. Did you see the rehab they did to the locker room that came out, Jim?
Yeah. It wasn't like that when I was there, but you know what? Those athletes, regardless of what everybody's opinion is, they do an awful lot for those schools.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's big,
at a school
big
like
money.
LSU. And, they bring in a lot of revenue for the school each and every year. So I think they're all very well deserving of it.
Yeah.
know a lot of it is geared towards the football team, but I do believe that student athletic center that they have there is for all the student athletes.
Right.
So they all benefited from all the programs, whether you're, on the golf team to baseball, softball, gymnastics, soccer. It's all a part of that student athlete, which is a wonderful community and environment to be involved with. I love LSU through and through. So
me too. Hey, did you see this? They're going to start selling beer in Tiger Stadium this season.
It'll be crazy.
And they said they wouldn't sell it in the booth next to the student section. I'm like, hell, they don't need theirs anyway. They snuck it in. But anyway, go Tigers. And then, y'all, if you haven't, if you will take the time, also go to iTunes and leave us a review. I don't care if it's positive or negative or whatever, but we have over 1,700 members on our private crew page. That's Real Life, Real Crime Friends, Fans, and Crew on Facebook, which you have to ask to be, to join the group. And if you do that, you send a request, and our moderators, our dream team, who we love so much, will get you approved. And, that's a number that people look at, right? Those private group pages, but the other ones they look at are how many reviews you have on iTunes. And it doesn't mean you have to listen through iTunes. It could be on whatever platform you're listening on. But you can go to iTunes and search for Real Life, Real Crime, and it'll come up and leave us a review. And I have never really pushed that or asked for it, but I didn't understand the importance in the past. Of course, I'm not from the podcast world, right? I didn't know what a podcast was 5 months ago, but it's a big deal. And we have over 300 something reviews now, but our listener numbers, and we're in 121 countries now across the world. So if y'all would, if even a percentage of you go and leave us a review, we would appreciate it. It helps us out. So
definitely leave us some reviews and some, your thoughts and your feedback. I mean, listen, we're here to provide all this for you fans out there that like to listen, and we like your feedback.
Yep.
So if something we've done really well or something you'd like to see us do a little bit better, let we grow and make this into the best that we can. And nobody better to guide us than you guys.
Right. Absolutely. And we do. And we love each and every one of you. And we've made a lot of changes in 5 months that y'all have recommended. Some of them we haven't, but 90% of them we have. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. We, didn't know anything about a podcast. So y'all guided us, and, we know that you like it because our numbers don't lie, and we appreciate each and every one of you. And just continue to like and share. And if you can, leave us a review. And if you want to vote for us on the podcast awards, that'd be cool. Patron members, we love you. We love all our fans equally, but patron members help support what we do in creating the show. There's a lot of costs to go with it, and they help defray the cost of it. So patron members, we'll give more shout outs next week, but we appreciate and love each and every one of you. Everybody else, if you can't be a patron member, we don't care. We love you just as much. But if you could like and share and tell somebody about Real Life, Real Crime, and throw us a review, and that's just as good. It's all love. Jim?
Well, again, thank you guys very much, and I look forward to giving you more stories here coming up next week too.
All right. So y'all, That's Jim Raffman, Jim the Hitman Raffman. Actually, we're going this week. We're going to put up a full-length episode on Jim the Hitman Raffman for Patreon, right? So that's coming before the end of July, the full bonus episode. But that's Jim the Hitman Raffman, and I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And until next time, or ever, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Thanks, Jim. Love you, bro.
Too, man. Thank you.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights?